Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel for another deep dive.
Yeah.
Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and leave us a comment.
Yes, please do.
Today we're taking a look at an article with a truly terrifying premise.
Yeah.
Imagine surviving a chilling encounter with one of America's most notorious serial killers, John Wayne Gacy.
It's a story that sends shivers down your spine, for sure.
Yeah.
John Wayne Gacy, the killer clown, was responsible for the deaths of 33 young men.
It's crazy.
His crimes shocked the nation, and they still kind of captivate our collective imagination, I think.
Yeah, and what we're diving into today adds a whole new layer to this already horrifying case.
Absolutely.
We're talking about actor Jack Merrill.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you know, the one from Law & Order and Grey's Anatomy.
Oh, yeah.
He recently came forward with his own terrifying experience with Gacy before the murders were even discovered.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what makes this even more unsettling is that Merrill's life as a working actor seems so incredibly ordinary. It really drives home the point that these horrific events can happen to anyone, anywhere, anytime.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's rewind the clock back to 1978.
Okay.
Picture this. A 19-year-old Merrill is walking home after a swim at the YMCA.
All right.
A seemingly harmless man in a car pulls up and offers him a ride.
And unfortunately, that man was John Wayne Gacy.
Dum dum dum.
This seemingly innocent offer was actually the start of a nightmare.
Totally. Merrill says that soon after he got into the car, Gacy pulls out a brown bottle, soaks a rag with some kind of liquid, and forces it over his face.
Oh my gosh.
Merrill blacks out completely.
Oh, wow.
When he comes to, he's handcuffed. I can't even begin to fathom the absolute terror he must have felt at that moment.
It's a chilling example of Gacy's modus operandi.
Right.
He often lured his victims with promises of work, or like in this case, offered rides. Then he'd use chloroform or other chemicals to subdue them. It's terrifying to think how many times he might have successfully used this tactic before.
Yeah, and it gets so much worse. Gacy takes Merrill back to his house and puts this absolutely horrific homemade device around Merrill's neck.
Oh, no.
This thing was rigged with ropes and pulleys, designed so that if Merrill struggled even a little, he would choke himself.
Oh, God.
Straight out of a horror movie.
What's particularly disturbing about this is the clear premeditation and planning involved.
Right.
This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment act. Gacy constructed this device specifically for torture.
Yeah.
It points to a truly sadistic and depraved mind.
And then Gacy rapes Merrill. Merrill knew that fighting back would be completely pointless, likely even escalating the situation. He made the incredibly difficult decision to endure the assault, hoping to survive the ordeal.
That's just unbelievable. This really speaks volumes about the incredible resilience of the human spirit when confronted with unimaginable trauma.
Yeah.
In that moment, Merrill made a calculated decision, choosing survival above all else.
Yeah.
It's a testament to his strength and will to live.
What's crucial to remember here is that at this point, Merrill had absolutely no idea that Gacy was a serial killer. He was just a young man trapped in this horrific situation.
Exactly. Imagine that added layer of fear and confusion he must have felt.
Oh my God.
He couldn't possibly have grasped the true extent of the danger he was in.
Eventually, Gacy seems to tire out and offers to take Merrill home. He even tries to give Merrill his phone number before driving off.
What?
Merrill completely understandably flushes the number down the toilet and tries his best to block out the entire experience.
It's a natural reaction to trauma. The human mind will often try to protect itself by suppressing or blocking out painful memories. It's a survival mechanism.
But then a few months later, Merrill sees a news report that changes everything. The report details the discovery of bodies buried near the very spot where Gacy picked them up. It suddenly hits Merrill.
Wow.
He was in the clutches of a serial killer.
That moment of realization must have been absolutely earth-shattering.
Yeah.
It's one thing to experience a traumatic event, but then to discover that the person responsible is capable of such monstrous acts. It's almost impossible to comprehend.
Merrill anonymously contacted the newspaper, but didn't get involved further as the police investigation progressed.
Right.
Remember, he was only 19. He'd already endured so much and likely feared the stigma and scrutiny that could come with being publicly linked to Gacy.
We need to acknowledge the complexities of trauma and how individuals cope. It's not our place to judge Merrill's decision to remain silent. He was navigating an incredibly difficult situation, and ultimately his choice was about self-preservation.
And so Merrill carried this secret for decades.
Yeah.
He built a successful acting career, but the trauma of that night undoubtedly lingered.
Trauma has this way of staying with us even when we try to bury it deep down. It can manifest in unexpected ways, impacting our relationships, our mental health, our entire sense of well-being. It's a heavy burden that many survivors carry silently.
Merrill even considered sharing his story years ago when he met with a Hollywood executive about turning his experience into a movie, but he hesitated. He didn't want his whole identity to become consumed by this one horrific event.
It's a valid concern. Many survivors worry about being defined by their trauma. They want to be seen as more than just a victim, and sharing such a personal and painful story publicly can be incredibly daunting.
But eventually Merrill decided to reclaim his story on his own terms. He created a one-man show called The Save, where he recounts his experience with Gacy. It's a powerful act of courage and a testament to his resilience.
And this is where things get really interesting. There's something incredibly empowering about taking control of your narrative after experiencing something as horrific as this. By sharing his story through art, Merrill is not only processing his own pain, but also potentially helping others who have endured similar experiences. It's a reminder that even in the darkest of times, hope and healing are possible.
And that's where we'll pick up in part 2. So make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss it. Thanks for joining us.
See you there. What's fascinating here is how Merrill's story highlights the psychology of survival. In moments of extreme stress, the brain can shift into this mode of hypervigilance, strategic thinking.
Right.
He recognized that fighting back against Gacy could have been fatal, so he focused on minimizing the harm.
Almost like a primal instinct taking over, right? Your body and mind doing whatever it takes to survive that immediate threat.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that there's no right or wrong way to react to trauma.
Yeah.
Everyone copes differently.
Sure.
Some might fight back, others might freeze, and some might try to appease their attacker. There's no judgment here.
And for Merrill, in that moment, it meant enduring the assault, getting home safely, and then trying to push the entire experience out of his mind. It's a powerful example of how the human mind tries to protect itself, even if it means carrying a heavy secret for years.
But as we know, trauma doesn't just disappear. It can resurface in unexpected ways, affecting our emotions, our behavior, even our relationships.
And that's where sharing these stories can be so incredibly important. It's not just about seeking justice or holding the perpetrator accountable. It's about breaking the silence, reducing the stigma, and finding healing through connection.
Absolutely. When survivors share their stories, it creates a space for others to do the same.
Right.
It helps people feel less alone, less isolated. It validates their experiences and encourages them to seek the support they need.
In a way, you could say that Merrill's decision to create a one-man show about his experience is a form of activism.
Oh, yeah.
He's taking back control of his narrative and using his platform to shine a light on the very real and often hidden consequences of trauma.
It's also a testament to the power of art as a tool for healing. Art provides a safe space to explore difficult emotions, to process traumatic experiences, and ultimately to transform pain into something meaningful.
And you never know. Merrill's story might resonate with someone out there who's struggling in silence. Maybe we'll give them the courage to seek help or to share their own experience. It's a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there's always hope.
And that's the power of these deep dives, isn't it? We explore these difficult topics, we learn from each other's experiences, and hopefully we come away with a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world around us.
Absolutely. And remember, if you or someone you know is struggling with trauma, there are resources available.
Yes, there are.
You don't have to suffer in silence. There are people who care and want to help.
That's a crucial point. It's so important to remember that you are not alone.
Now, before we wrap up our deep dive into Jack Merrill's chilling encounter with John Wayne Gacy, I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier, Merrill's decision to finally share his story after all these years. What do you think finally led him to that point?
It's a complex question, and we can only speculate. I think it's likely a combination of factors. As time passed, the fear and stigma surrounding Gacy's case might have lessened, making it easier for survivors like Merrill to come forward.
That makes sense. It's not uncommon for survivors to feel shame or guilt even though they did nothing wrong. And the fear of being judged or disbelieved can be paralyzing.
Exactly, and I think in Merrill's case, the desire to reclaim his narrative, to control how his story is told, probably played a role. By creating a one-man show, he's sharing his experience on his own terms, without the filter of media sensationalism or the judgment of others.
It's a powerful way to take back control after such a traumatic event. And it really speaks to the resilience of the human spirit, that ability to find meaning and purpose, even in the face of such darkness.
Absolutely. And let's not forget the potential impact this could have on other survivors. Merrill's story could inspire others to come forward to seek help or simply to know that they are not alone.
That's such an important point. Because often the hardest part of dealing with trauma is the isolation, that feeling that no one understands what you've been through.
Exactly. And when survivors share their stories, they create a sense of community and connection. They break down the walls of silence and stigma and pave the way for healing.
So in a way, Merrill's story is a story of hope, isn't it?
Mm.
It's a reminder that even after enduring unimaginable horror, it's possible to find strength, healing, and even a sense of purpose.
Precisely, Merrill's story reminds us of the extraordinary human capacity for resilience, for finding light even in the darkest corners. And it really underscores the vital importance of empathy, compassion, and support for survivors of trauma.
Well said. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one key takeaway you hope our listeners will carry with them from this conversation?
I hope they remember that trauma can touch anyone and that there is absolutely no shame in seeking help. If you're struggling, please reach out. There are resources available and you don't have to face this alone.
And it's equally important to remember that everyone's journey through trauma is unique. There's no one right way to heal. It's a process that takes time, patience, and support. Be kind to yourself and know that you are not alone.
Absolutely. And on that note, we'd like to thank you for joining us on this deep dive into Jack Merrill's story. We hope you found it insightful and thought-provoking. And remember, if this conversation had brought up any difficult emotions, please don't hesitate to reach out for help. There are people who care and want to support you.
And as always, if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and leave us a comment below. We love hearing your thoughts and feedback. Be sure to join us next time for another deep dive into a fascinating and thought-provoking topic. Until then, take care.